PGA Nation, we are back. And I'm not in a good place here, all right? I got punished last week. Everyone was gassing me up. They're like, oh, you got punished, but it'll still do well. And I didn't do well, and I got last place, and now I'm getting punished again. And I would like to say, I said this at the beginning of the year, and I don't know why I let this happen. The rule should have been you can only get punished once, and then you automatically don't go again. But somehow I'm letting you guys just keep me at the bottom, getting punished all over the place. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not happy, but the Waste Management is an awesome tournament. So we're going to have a lot of fun. The draft tonight's going to be a lot of fun. But just at all, watching golf this weekend, if you're not used to it, like, honestly, I'm more excited about the golf tournament this weekend. Is there any other sports going on Sunday? Is that the only? I mean it. Like, this Super Bowl, I'm not all that into. Like, I think this is going to be a ton of fun on Sunday. It's a really great tournament. The crowds are going to be wild. It's a pretty good field for the Waste Management. So I feel like we're finally really back in the swing of things, getting some of the almost like the we're not in a major, but it feels like a major environment, right? The players major where everyone is taking this tournament seriously. The guys want to win. I'm pumped for a big gambling DFS week in golf, not in football, but in golf, because I think this is a bigger week for golf betting. Can I say it? Is it? I think it is. For me, I'll have more action on this golf tournament than on the Super Bowl. That's how excited I am for this week. And so for that reason, we have to bring in the big guns to help draft with us tonight. We brought in Matt Miller drafting tonight. Matty, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be on the show and appreciate the invite.
Well, we're stoked to have you. For anyone who follows us, follows Rotoballer, knows Matt Miller, you know if you follow Matt, you're going to make more money betting on golf. I mean, he knows what he is talking about. He's really great at this. You know, he's been crushing it in the outright market on some of the bets that he's making. You're going to get his takes tonight. So he'll be drafting teams with us, but you also get his opinions on where to place your wagers this week. If you give Matt a follow, your bank account's going to go up. You're going to win more bets. So make sure you do that. Spence, with the throwback penny jersey representing the Phoenix Open. I love it. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. First of all, congratulations to Jody on her first cash. That's very exciting to see. I don't know how many people know this. I know Matt knows this because we've talked about this many times before, but the very first podcast I ever did was with Matt. That's going back now to, what would that be, 2021, Matt?
Yeah, I think it was probably 2020 or 2021.
Yeah, that was my intro into the podcasting world. Never looked back since that moment. So I've said this to him. I've said this in the space. I owe a lot to Matt for even reaching out to me at that time. This was not something that I thought I wanted to do. And it kind of spurned on a bunch of things to where Sticks Picks ended up reaching out. And one thing has led to the next. And now all of us are sitting here today. But big fan of Matt always. I think he does great work in the betting space. And I'm really excited with all the work that we're able to showcase of his over at Rotoballer.
Wow, full circle moment. Podcast started, and here we are back again. Well, that's great. That means there's a lot more pressure on you, one of you winning tonight, because you guys have come back from your first podcast. Now you guys say, who's the champion? Since, what was it, 2001? So in the last 5 years, who has become the best podcast? And that's only one way to decide, and that's whoever has the best draft this week. So we will be doing a draft tonight, which, of course, we do every week, and we're very excited for it. But before we go further, a congratulations is in order. Back to back. Team audience is hot. Winning last week. They won again. They have 2 in a row. I don't know. Has audience ever gotten a three-peat? I know they've gotten 2 before. Have they ever gotten the full three-peat?
I don't know if this counts. I've called it the Tiger Slam for them. If you date it back to last year, they honestly have won the last tournament there. So they've won 3 in a row. I don't know if we can technically count that because it's gone between seasons now, but as a actual year in to year out part of it, I don't know if the audience ever has gone 3-peat. And that's something on this show that not very many people have done. Audience is on fire right now, though. I wouldn't count them out.
Well, audience, you have an opportunity this week to solidify that, to help make that happen. You guys get to pick the draft order. You win, you pick the order, drop it in the chat. The first person to drop an order in the chat that has the audience picking either first or last, that will be the order we go with. It is easier to control the draft with you guys going first or last, so that is going to be my stipulation. You have to go first or last. But the first person to drop an order in the chat with audience as the first or last pick, that will be the order for tonight. I will give a quick refresher on how the draft works before we get started. But before we do so, Spence, I'm happy this week because it's only one course. And I think for DFS purposes, for betting purposes, it makes it a lot easier for us to kind of gain an edge, do our research, find out which golfer profiles we prefer. And there's no one that does it better than you, Spence. So give us the course breakdown. What are you looking for this week in Phoenix?
It's definitely going to be a circus-like atmosphere. If I think most of our users and most people that are tuning in have either heard it on shows already or know this to be the case. This is insanity throughout, costume-themed parties, beer all over the place. I've made the joke sometimes in my articles that, like, no matter how many beers get thrown onto the 16th green there, those greens are always going to remain very fast. This is a off the tee test that is going to create rollout. It's an off the tee test to where if you don't go completely wayward with your drive, you're usually able to find advantage. If you look at the dispersion of scoring marks, almost 24% of the output for the winner comes from strokes gained off the tee. That's about as high as you get in any spot. Very pure greens, despite these being quick. I think GIR is something that you need to look at. Total driving as a whole. I don't know if the accuracy part is as much as it used to be a couple years ago, but a lot of that is great. What you cannot find is that unquantifiable metric of how do people react and how do they handle the mayhem that's being played at this course. And I think there's something to be said about that. You can't put it into a model and measure it. But there are certain players that don't like to play this event. There's not names that you see every single year, but of the names that come back, a lot of those options find rollover success year in and year out with it. So, we'll talk a little bit more about the metrics as this show moves on. It's a lot of the reasons why I made the picks that I did, but distance, off the tee prowess. That's kind of where I'm looking this week.
Oh, there it is. Distance, off the tee. That's how you want to find a winner. Also, you got to have someone that can handle a crowd because it is not like a typical PGA tournament that's going to be quiet. You're going to hear some noise, some ruckus, and guys who thrive in that atmosphere. Maybe we'll have some more success this week. The draft order is in. Audience, you got the win. You're going first. You've earned it. Spencer second. I will be going third. Matt, you'll be going fourth. It looks like you've been selected by your peers, Courtney, to be team captain for team audience. Again, Courtney, you've been the consistent team captain and you're great at it. So we appreciate you. Unless you don't want to do it tonight, then we can find someone else. But if you're down, team Courtney will be the audience captain, which means you guys will be doing the same thing you always do. But Courtney will be shepherding to make sure your picks are locked in as we go. Spencer has the punishment board up for tonight. Before we get into that, I will just give a quick refresher on how the draft will go tonight. We will have our typical snake style draft as we always do. 4 picks. Audience, Spencer, myself, and Matt. Matt, you will have 2, and then we will go back like your typical fantasy football snake draft. Depending on my punishment, that may change. The one big caveat with our draft is you do need to be able to afford your roster in a real DraftKings tournament. So you can't just take all the best players. You do need to make sure that you can actually afford each player. So plan accordingly as you go through your draft. Make sure you're watching this on YouTube. If you're new to the show, you can get in the chat and you can draft along with us. When audience, it's your turn to pick, which is right now. So if you guys want to start putting nominations in, feel free, get your nomination in. Courtney will make sure that the final pick is locked in. Basically what that means is anyone in the chat can nominate a golfer to be your pick. Say who you want. As soon as a golfer is mentioned twice. So if a second audience member mentions the same golfer, so right now we have Cam Young. If Cam Young is mentioned again, that is your pick. If Scotty's mentioned again, that is your pick. And Courtney is going to solidify the pick for team audience. All right. Without further ado, Spence, run them through the punishment wheel.
Well, I'm going to spin this today so we don't spend a lot of time on it. I posted about it on Twitter. We can go through what the ultimate punishment ends up being, Joel, when you end up getting this. There are, as always, some that are much worse than others. Ian added one for us. It's a Globetrotter one. We'll talk about that one if it lands. But I say we get this started. I say we spin this wheel and we figure out what the punishment's going to be for you this week, Joel.
All right, give it a whirl.
All right, here we go.
It's like Wheel of Fortune, but every one is bankruptcy. What does this mean?
All right. I don't think the fiduciary curse one is that bad. That one is that the losing team, each time that you are up on the board, you must nominate 3 players per round.
Okay.
The audience is going to have to pick one of those 3 names that you talk about. So you got to disclose some of your strategy that you're going to be using, but you get to draft your team this week. So there's at least not going to be that excuse.
Okay, I can work with this. Not that bad. But audience, the one thing I'll need from you and Courtney, I'll rely on you to make sure this goes smoothly, is if you're not picking my pick in a timely fashion, Courtney, just go ahead and make the selection on whichever guy I nominate so we can keep the draft moving along. But I actually don't mind this punches. At least I'm getting somebody I want each turn, which instead of skipping a whole round every time, which isn't so bad. But it looks like the number 1 pick, Scotty Scheffler, is off the board. Scotty Scheffler has been a big talking point this week. If you're reading online, it's people are talking about maybe not as much DFS, even though its price is absurd, rightfully so. More about the with or without betting Scotty markets, right? What do you do with that? And I saw a lot of interesting debates about it, and it's a tough one, and it is interesting, and it's kind of making things hard. You know, where my take is, I've gotten burned a few times on the dead heat rules, where like I pick a guy, I wins, and the dead heat I end up splitting, I don't win much, and it's annoying. And the problem with betting without Scotty is that rule goes back into play, because then you can just hit 4 guys could tie for second, and then you got to split the money, which I hate. So I would probably just bet with Scotty, even though I think he's going to win. But that's where I would say, just because I want to avoid dead heat. But I'd love to get your take on it, Matt.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to take Scotty on again this week. It's always a dangerous game, especially at this event. You know how well he's played here. He's coming in off of a win at, the Amex, a course that you kind of wouldn't really, picture as his type of event. He wins that. Kind of feels like he's definitely going to be in the mix, but I'm with you from a strategy perspective. I think that there's just not enough value to bet the without Scotty market right now, and it's definitely kind of changing the way that I'm going to be shaping my card, in particular this week, but probably in the events that he plays this year and he plays well. Kind of feels like you have to almost assume he's going to be there on Sunday, and you're going to have to kind of take guys that you feel are going to be able to beat him head to head. So maybe some of those deeper guys that we like and kind of fall in love with, this might not be the week for them, just assuming that Scotty's going to be in the mix on Sunday.
I mean, he's in the mix pretty much every Sunday, so hard to imagine why he wouldn't be this week. What about you, Spence?
This is such a divisive topic, and I feel like for the past 7 months, I've been one of the leaders in the clubhouse of you have to keep Scotty in the market as you bet. There's a handful of reasons for it. I think if you look at the sports book as a whole, they're never going to really give you that all systems go price on Scotty. So if you look at it in a situation like this week, they may put his implied win probability at, let's just say 30% if you're looking at that like plus 225 number. You'd have to talk to shops specifically to see exactly what their true win equity is for him. But I would assume most casinos are probably more in that 25% range, which is kind of in that 3-to-1 territory. So you're already not getting a great price to do it. Where my concern more so comes into account into this is that you run into a problem that not only does the Scotty price get reduced, but then you also get all this onslaught of players behind it to where they're kind of getting priced as if Scotty's not in the tournament to begin with. And then when you double down on that factor and then you remove Scotty from the field, all you're doing is taking somebody like Brooks Koepka, who's 50-1, and you're taking him now to 30-1. And those dead heats that you guys talked about start coming into play. And there's some positives to that. Like, I understand that you can win money there where you can't in another area. But the one thing I will say, because I know that there are people that are super strong on one end, and I know that there are people, it seems like the three of us are kind of on this aisle here to where you need to keep Scotty in the market. The only thing I would say is if you live in absolutes that you can never think outside of the box in it, that is probably a worse negative than even choosing one side or the other. I will lead this into our pick here because I actually think that this is an interesting talking point, if nothing else here. So I'm going to take Cameron Young with my selection. And when I looked at Cameron Young, he opened this week at about 25 to 1, moved down to 20 to 1 at a lot of shops. You can still find that 25 to 1 if you look around. You might even be able to get 26 to 1 if you find him at one of those offshore books there. But if you compare the 25s to 1s, we'll just call it that number, with Scotty in versus the 20 to 1 without Scotty, I'm going to give you some of my implied win equity on all of these golfers because I don't want to turn this into too much of a mathematical equation where everybody gets bored on this. But I do think specifically with Cameron Young here, it kind of makes sense. So I had Cameron Young at 5.43% to win. So my proper price on him, if you're doing the math, is 17.5 to 1. If you look at the market, 20 to 1 would mean that he's 4.76% to win. If you look at the 25 to 1 mark, he is going to be 3.85% to win. So a 0.91% shift there. So the question that I ask myself is, one, does 1% more win equity go into the Young profile if you remove Scotty from the field? And then if it doesn't, how much does our edge shrink while going that route? And I actually, not every player is like that, whether we want to call it 25% or 30% of what Scotty's true win probability is. We'll just call it 25 for the sake of this argument here. You have to remember, just because he has 25% does not mean that that's equally distributed amongst all the other players in the tournament. There's some golfers, Cameron Young's my second favorite play on the board, that are going to get more of that 25% than, whoever's the 5,000 to 1 golfer at the bottom that probably doesn't get any impact to this. So I think 99.99% of the time in this situation, you're going to always be better to keep Scotty in the market. There are very few situations where I can't imagine that's the case, but the Cameron Young one here is one of those spots where I'm okay betting him with the without Scotty market. And I really like him here for DraftKings. I think he's one of the better plays on the board. And as anybody who tuned into the show last week will talk about or remember with it, that was the number one pick from the audience. And whether we want to say a 22nd place finish at nearly 20% ownership at $10,000 is a good finish or not, I would say that this is a much better course fit for him, that if anybody wants to jump off the train for that reason, I am very happy riding in the conductor's seat on that.
All right. Well, there you have it. Is that Cameron Young off the board, the second pick. We're definitely, this draft is starting at the top of the board, and it's going to probably stay there with my pick, even though I will have one option that I've given you guys that you can take from me that's maybe not at the top of the board. So because it's going to take now, I'm going to get right into my three. My three choices are going to be Siwoo Kim, Pearson Cootie, and the last option is, there's three guys I'm deciding between. I'm going to go with Mav McNeely. So audience, whichever one you want me to take. So how does this work, Spence? Is the first one to say it is the pick?
I think we should still, I mean, I don't know. We've never done this before. I would still say we try to get two recommendations in there. If there's only one apiece, we'll let Courtney be the tiebreaker for it.
Okay. Well, now that my nominations, we got Mav out there. While my nominations are out, what we'll do is I'll go to you here, Spence. Of the three I put out, I'm out there, I guess. Who would you take?
I'm going to bite my tongue on this one because there is one that I would like more than the rest. It looks like Maverick McNeely is going to be your pick. I will say this. All three are very quality selections. All three are going to be in my player pool this week. I think Maverick McNeely specifically. It's really funny, Joel, because if you look at what golf has become, it is Scotty dominating golf. And then on the back end of the equation, there's all these golfers like the Morikawas of the world that are maybe not producing. Hovland, we can throw all those names in, Spieth of years ago, that are not producing at the level that they once were. And now all of a sudden you have the Maverick McNeelys and insert name X, Y, or Z that have catapulted themselves into a range that are in the betting odds above a lot of those names. And we're seeing that with McNeely week in and week out. I think McNeely's on to really big things this year. And anytime you can get him on the West Coast, I think it's a nice spot for him.
Boom. All right. Listen, McNeely would have been my third choice of the three, but I'm still happy with it. It was one of my top 5 choices that I put out there, obviously, the way this draft went. So coming out with Mav McNeely here at 9,100. I think the point Spencer made is spot on. I agree with. We're at this stage right now in the PGA Tour where there's kind of this group of, I don't want to call him an up-and-comer because Mav has been around, but he's really kind of peaking, hitting kind of his stride. And these guys are just better than the incumbents. And their pricing hasn't always changed. And so I think you have an opportunity now, especially for DFS, to really find value as we're kind of finding a shift in the guard in terms of who the elite tier is on the PGA Tour. So with that being said, Maddie, with your inaugural first two King of the Draft picks, you're on the clock.
Okay. I don't have to stay at the top, do I? I mean, I can kind of pick from
you can go wherever you want to go.
Wherever you want.
I'll start off with kind of, I guess, a chalky pick for this week, but I'm going to take Jordan Spieth. It kind of just seems like he's an automatic top 10 here at this event. I'm not, week in and week out, the biggest Spieth guy. He's obviously an exciting player to watch. The crowd's going to be, behind him if he's in the mix, but just every year kind of doesn't even matter the form he's in. He plays really well at this event. Kind of just feels like a given that he's going to be in the mix here.
Yeah, I mean, this is the course you want Spieth at. Like you said, he always shows up. And it's interesting because you are kind of marrying a bit of good form. He's playing better now than he has in the last year and a half with the course you love Spieth at a pretty good price. I think you said it, Matt. The only real concern with Spieth this week is how chalky is he going to become? If it gets, if it gets in the 25%, 30% range, I think that's probably a little too high for me. But anything under 20% with Spieth, I'd be happy to roll the dice with there.
This is not, before Matt makes his next selection, this is not even hyperbole from me to say this. I never play Jordan Spieth. I never want to get to him. I always think he's overpriced. I've gotten past the days of wanting to take him on in matchups. He's a little too volatile, and when I seem to fade him, he kind of performs, and then you randomly see the implosions occur. But I really like Jordan Spieth this week. We can talk about the course history over and over again. 4 top 6 finishes in the last 4 years of playing this tournament. And if you're wondering what that reason is, a lot of that answer comes down to a very similar sentiment to what I talked about with Cameron Young, to where the putting splits, whether it's desert or on similar green complexes, he spikes high in my model to where we used to think of Spieth as a putter and as maybe the best putter in the world. And that hasn't been the case for him in the last handful of years. But if you look at him on specific green complexes, he's inside of the top 5 for me. And then the one attribute that is always the one that derails him is the off the tee stuff. He's very erratic off the tee, but you look at him at driver heavy courses, he's 17th in my model. If you look at courses where there's a low missed cut penalty, he's inside the top 35. And really the one detriment that could still come into play is if you go extremely wide with it, because one of the things I look for off the tee data is I wanted to find, I don't think accuracy as a whole is a very good stat to look at. I looked at misses to the edge of the fairway. So I was trying to find guys that didn't spray it quite as far. And it's not to say that Spieth is not going to still spray the ball, but when you look at the model of him liking driver heavy courses and finding success here in the past, and it's something fitting his eye at this course, I think there's a lot to like about him. And I see him at 17% right now. I don't know if he's going to get higher than that. That's the 6th highest owned golfer on the slate, but for somebody that I never want to play, he's number 4 overall for me. I think as an outright bet, even at 50 to 1, what's that, Joel?
Question. You made a really good point. I'm interested, but how do you ascertain, or how do you attain, I should say, data around drives that hit the edge of the green?
It's on the PGA Tour. If you go to the off the tee stats, there's a category in there that's called distance to the edge of the fairway, and it shows the people that spray the ball the most on it. I'll bring it up. Maybe at the end of the show, I can even just show on the PGA Tour website who some of the top names are from the last 2 years on that. But not to say that Spieth is good in that category. He's still terrible. But you look at somebody like Scotty. Scotty has the distance prerequisite that you would want. He also does not spray the ball off the tee, which is what makes him so dangerous at this course every single year. He's dangerous at every course. That's the understatement of the century. But there's some that he's even more dangerous at, and this is probably one of them.
Boom. All right. There you have it. Maddie, Spieth off the board with your second pick. Where are you going?
Well, Spencer, I think I got to do it. I promise I'll get a little less chalky as we go on, but I'm going to take my guy, Brooks Koepka here. He is at, where did I see him? 8,700 maybe?
Yes.
Is that right? Two-time winner at this event. I thought he looked pretty good last week, minus obviously the putting performance was abysmal. But tee to green, he looked really good. Thought he hit his irons well. Very encouraging for his first start back. I think that, this is an event that he's played well. It seemed like the crowd was kind of behind him last week. I know there was sort of some question marks on how that reaction would be, especially at this kind of rowdy event. If they're behind him, I think that's going to kind of help him a little bit more. So I'm hoping for a big week this week out of Brooks.
Boom. All right. Brooksy off the board. If he finds that putter, right, I think the result's going to come. I think you nailed it. 8,700. That price certainly does seem right. In the 2020 U.S. Open, that is a heck of a start. And this week's tournament could also be a heck of a start, but for sure in the 2020 U.S. Open, that is a great start. All right. I got 3 more nominations to put up on the board here to keep this moving. I'm going to stick with what I did last time. We're going back to Siwoo. We're going back to Cootie. And for the third option, we will go with it's a tie between two. I just gotta look up something real quick. Yeah, we're gonna go with Chris Gotterup. So between those 3, audience, lock my pick in. We'll go with you here, Matt. Of the 3 options I just laid out there, you don't have to answer because it could kind of give something away for the future of your draft. Which one would you go with?
So the first one was Siwoo, right?
It's Siwoo, Gotterup, and Cootie.
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, I'm having sort of this like weird conundrum with Siwoo right now where I'm just not used to seeing him like this high up on the board. I mean, I'm looking at the odds list. I'm seeing his odds next to his name, but I imagine even in like a DraftKings, he's, a higher price than you would typically see him at. So there's sort of that sticker shock with Siwoo at the moment, but he's hitting it so well right now. And I was really impressed with what he did last week at Torrey Pines because I don't really picture that as like a Siwoo Kim course. So for him to play the way that he played, he's seemingly going to a better course fit this week. It seems like he's going to play really well again. It just is, I guess, a matter of if you have, the money to fit him in at that price point. But I think he's going to have another good week this week.
I'm with you. I had the same thought. My first thought was Siwoo in this price range is kind of like, I'm a Siwoo guy when he's at mid-tier and he can have an up week, right? Now I'm not playing with my elite play. But, I mean, that's how quickly golf changed. I mean, you're red hot for a month and a half. Like, you're then become a priority. And he did that. He's earned that. And there's no reason to think he won't be at the top of the board again this week. The course makes sense. So, but I'm with you. 2 months ago, if I saw Siwoo here, I would have been disgusted. But that's how quickly things change in golf. Gotterup is the locked-in pick off the board. So you guys really don't want to give me. I had 2 opportunities for Siwoo and Cootie, and you guys with the third option both on, which I'm okay with. I think for my team, this is a solid start, and I think in a GPP, I like the start because it's different. It doesn't have one of those main top guys that I think everyone's trying to get to. It's balanced and allows me to really have a squad that doesn't have to dip down too low. I don't have any of these 10K guys bringing my roster down, so I like starting with a lineup like this. I think this can be a unique way of building for this week's tournament. Spence, would love to get your take, and then you're up with your second.
I'm a little surprised that the odd, and not that any of them are bad choices. All 3 of those names that you mentioned, once again, are on my short list of options that I was either considering for my next pick or will be playing this week. A little surprised that the audience gave you Gotterup. Maybe that's just where the price tag is with it. When I was talking at the beginning part of the show, about golfers like Morikawa that have gone in reverse, and names like, and I did not name Goddard for a reason on it, that are moving in that opposite direction. It's Chris Goddard was one of the names that is kind of on like the forefront of my mind when I said that. And when you look at the head-to-head board this week, and maybe this is a spot where I end up getting burnt in going down this direction, but I bet Chris Goddard at minus 115 against Colin Morikawa. And funny enough, that price has actually now moved in the wrong direction. That's not something that usually happens for us in the Rotoballer chat. We spiked that up into the minus 150 range, maybe even for a given point at some of the shops. And it got hit hard in the other direction. There's a lot of Morikawa support. And, I think at 105, it's even better than it was at 115. But I think there are certain players, Goddard's one of them. And I'm going to transition this into my pick once again, because it kind of just keeps working out perfectly. And it's not a spot, Joel, where I'm on purpose trying to take a golfer that you have mentioned. It's just going to have to play out this way. Another name that I think that the market is way too slow to move on is Pearson Coody at $8,000. If you look at his results since the Sanderson Farms, he is churning out top 25 finishes left and right with it. And I would argue that TPC Scottsdale might even be a better course for him than a lot of those other venues were. Aggression matters here. He's the number one player through a short sample size in aggression. He's the number one player for me in my model at driver heavy courses. He's the number two player for me in strokes gained off the tee at desert courses. From just an upside standpoint, he's a top 6 win equity player for me, which, there are numbers if you shop around. Like at the legal market, sure, 50 to 1, but I've seen him as high as 80 to 1 if you shop around some of those offshore books. I'm going to continue to be ahead of what I believe this is on Coody here. And Coody got her up all these names until the market makes the change that needs to be made. I feel like every single one of those guys needs to be positioned into your builds almost on a weekly basis.
Oh, I agree. There you have it. Coody off the board. So definitely some overlap. I guess my one question for you, Spence, is what kind of ownership are you seeing on Coody?
I don't know if this is going to end up being correct. I see 11.98% right now. That's the 15th highest owned golfer. I kind of would anticipate him being higher than that just with all the buzz around him that's in the space right now. I was shocked to see that number that low, but if he's sub 15%, sign me up for that.
I'm with you. It's up 15%. All right, audience, nominations are coming in. I love it. We do need those doubles. Audience, you have 2 here, so keep it coming because you're not getting 2 picks. We're waiting on 2 picks to get finalized, so get plenty of nominations in. While we wait, let's go to you, Matt. Are you playing Pearson Coody this week?
I like Coody. I kind of agree with a lot of what Spencer said. I haven't gotten there yet in like the outright market, but it's hard to not like him at this point. He's playing really well. I think people are kind of starting to catch on in our space, but he doesn't necessarily have, I guess, that sort of respect yet from a lot of people. Probably, I think he deserves it, but I just think that people haven't necessarily caught on fully to him yet. But I think it's a good play. I think I wouldn't fault anyone for taking him this week. I don't know if I'm going to get there, my outright card, but I do like the thought.
All right. Well, Kiefer is locked in for the first pick. We need the second pick for team audience. While we wait, we'll go back to you here, Spence. Is John Kiefer going to be in your player pool?
Do you want to talk about Kiefer at all, Joel? I know we had our funny bet that we had a couple weeks ago with Kiefer and Novak.
Listen, I laughed about it. He ended up playing great. I made the joke. I didn't even know who he was. I know who he is now. He is a good player. I think my concern with him is he's better than I thought. I lost the bet. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a play for me this week. That doesn't mean I won't go back to him later. I think there'll be weeks I will play him. I think he looks good. I think when it's a more watered down field, it'll be someone I'll be more interested in. I think for this week, I'm not sure he has the upside. I think he might make the cut, maybe get you in the 30s or 40s. But if you're looking at a GPP this week, I think there's just a little bit more of a loaded field. And I think there's another direction I'd like to go, especially there's some other guys in the 7K range I think I prefer than Kiefer. So for me, it's a pass, but I can understand. Or even if it was a cash lineup, I could understand the play more. What about you, Spence?
He's fifth in my model through a very short sample size and driving distance, so you would have to think that the course is a nice setup for him. He did grade lower in my sheet than he would have the past 2 weeks. I talked about it on the Novak bet, played him that week, played him last week also. I don't know if I'm as high on him. I will say this, and this is where I am probably in 100% lockstep with you. There's another bet that you can find that has kind of moved in the wrong direction recently that we gave out on the Rotoballer Discord, but I went back to John Kiefer again this week, and I ended up fading Steven Jaeger. Jaeger had that big finish at the Farmers. I think this is a spot, even if you look at, I was watching, I had a fade against Jaeger in round 4 where I took Jake Knapp. And I got lucky to win that. That was definitely unlucky almost. Jaeger chipped in from 61 feet to kind of make that bet look like it was going to lose. And then you look at the shot tracker at the very end, Jaeger was hitting it into a different part of California. Like, I don't know how he was actually salvaging par in those spots. I think this is something you cannot do on this course. I think that volatility off the tee, he has upside, don't get me wrong, and maybe more upside than what John Kiefer has. But from just a safety answer, and if we're talking about cash games or we're talking about head-to-heads, that's kind of my preferred route to play Kiefer also. So I think I'm in agreement with you on that, Joel, kind of how I would like to deploy him this week.
All right, there you have it. And the second pick is Adam Schenk. And I was going to make a comment, and then I realized Team Audience took Scotty first. So when you take Scotty first, the rest of your lineup has got to be some way of finding value, because you can't afford getting too high up the board with a 14.5 Scotty Scheffler on your team. So to follow that up with Kiefer and Schenk, those are your two values. It's not a terrible start. At first, I didn't like it, but now thinking you have Scheffler, so you kind of have to go deep down the value. Of the value plays, I can understand where you're going, but it's an interesting way to think about it. Is that the kind of build you want, where you're shooting for the top with Scotty and then trying to just find guys who have a prayer's chance to give you some upside to fill out the rest of your roster? We shall see. Maddie, I'd love to get your take. Are you on Kiefer or Schenk this week?
I'm probably not going to be. I think I understand both picks. But for me, I'm probably just going to lean with kind of some other guys in those areas this week. But as you noted, starting with Scotty, you kind of have to build your roster a little bit different way, build your lineup a little bit of a different way there. So I do get it for sure.
All right. Well, there you have it. Schenk and Kiefer off the board. Spence, you got Young and Cootie, $8K per pick on average left to spend. Where are you going with your third pick?
I will say this about Adam Schenk very quickly, and I give the audience credit for what they've done here by starting with Scotty. Whether or not it ends up being a success, we will see. But they're now at 7,400 per pick that they can make. That's not really that easy of a spot when you immediately spend 14,500. So that 6,200 from Schenk definitely opens things up. For whatever it's worth, Schenk is the best value that I have in my model at that price tag. Now, that does not mean that my model's in love with him. He's 52nd overall. He's one of those fringe cut makers one way or another, but I don't know if in a GPP sort of contest, if you're going to need more than that, and that's the argument. But 3 consecutive top 25s at this tournament, the 11th at the Farmers, where I don't think is as good of a course fit as you're going to get from him this week. So I don't hate the pick. It's certainly a route to consider. And if nothing else, I mean, one of the things you have to be aware of is when you take Scotty, you're going to have to try not to go chalk in every single spot, because everybody's going to end up in the same names. Kiefer's 3.99%. Adam Schenk is 3.08, which, I mean, all things considered might be a little bit high down in that zone, but like, you're already differentiating yourself enough. So I think the audience is doing a good job. I think the audience has become very savvy with what they do every week, and it's showing with them winning this contest over and over again. I don't think I have to take this pick right now. I could probably wait and do this differently. This is one of the lower owned players, all things considered, of golfers that are $9,000 and up. But I am going to take Xander Schauffele here at 10,500. To me, this is one of those situations where he's 30% plus owned last week. He misses the cut on the number, and all of a sudden everybody jumps off of it, partially because you can't fit Xander and Scotty into a build, partially because the industry has made up their mind right now to where they would rather play Siwoo, they would rather play Cameron Young, they would rather play Hideki. If you move lower, they would rather play Maverick McNeely. And that's kind of opened up this world for Xander to where he does not rank as highly for me as he normally would. He is third overall. 1 is Scotty, 2 is Cam Young, 3 is Xander. But I see 12% ownership for a guy that has gone 10th, 3rd, and 2nd in this tournament. This is a nice buyback spot at an ownership percentage that really does give you a chance to differentiate a build.
A low-owned Xander Schauffele off the board. Interesting. I wasn't going to play Xander this week, but I think for a GPP it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the upside's there. And to get him at that low ownership where obviously you just can't play Scheffler and Schauffele. If Schauffele, gets you that top 5, wins the tournament, that's how you really differentiate yourself. So it's certainly a smart GPP differentiator. I can see the strategy behind that pick. Welcome to the show, Sia Najad. Long time. We appreciate you. He is Sia endorses the Hong Tong Lee shout out. Hong Tong's been playing well. He's looked good out there. Sia is on him as well. So a lot of picks left in this draft. Someone to keep an eye out for. I'm going to put something in the chat real quick to see how this goes. Okay. All right. You guys can pick. Those are my 3. I'm going with Burns, Siwoo, and Theegala. So pick one of those for my next pick. While we wait, we're going back to you, Matt. Of the 3 I put on the screen, and I know I've given you Siwoo now like 3 times to weigh that over. Which direction would you go?
Yeah, I think we've talked about Siwoo. I do definitely like him this week. I think it's a good spot for Sam Burns. He was fine last time we saw him at the Amex. Kind of, I guess, underwhelming for some who thought, he had a chance to win that week. But I like him a lot at this event. He's played pretty well here. I think he's a good, course fit. He can get really hot with that putter. So I think Sam Burns is going to have a good week this week. I kind of like going in that direction there.
Well, obviously, no one in the audience is giving me Burns, so that's not even an option. It looks like I'm going to get locked into the confusing Siwoo. Andrew tried to make a joke, which made it seem like I may have had the pick, but I think I unfortunately I'm locked into Theegala, which not unfortunately I nominated him. I'm happy with Theegala. Theegala, I'm curious, Spence, what kind of ownership are you seeing on Theegala as far?
14.25%. That would be the 10th highest owned player.
Yeah, that's a little higher than I would have liked to see for him. But listen, coming out in 2026, and at least since the last 2 weeks, he's giving you 2 top 10s. So if you want to look at form, that seems to be returning. And then if you want to look at someone who has upside, obviously we know Theegala can do it. Last year was abysmal. So the people who are just thinking what we got from Theegala last year, then yeah, no one's gonna be interested in the Sahith Theegala we saw last year. But 2026 is a new year, 2 top 10s, and then if you want to just look at what has he done here, he's got a pretty good history here. So I think Sahith Theegala is someone that is going to find that form, continue to play well. I'm happy to roll with Theegala here at 8,400. Similar to what we were saying before. There's some opportunity here where if you go away from Scotty to kind of live in the middle, find value, and find 6 golfers that can give you some upside, which is kind of obviously the route I have to go, but it's one which I think is as viable this week. I think it's a good strategy. So Theegala off the board, Matt. Would love to get your take on playing him this week, and then you got 2.
Yeah, I think he makes a lot of sense here. He's trending in the right direction. He's played well here before. I like him as a golfer overall, so I definitely think he's heading in the right direction. I like him this week.
Oh, all right, man. He likes him. You got 2 here. So you've taken Spieth and Koepka. You got about 8,200 per pick to spend. Where are you going with your next 2 picks?
I'm going to take Kurt Kitayama with this pick. He is, I believe, 7,600. He's hitting it really well right now on approach, coming off, missed cut at the Amex and didn't play that well at the Sony, but I think this is kind of a better course for him. He was 9th here 2 years ago, I believe. It's actually funny. Me and Ian have a live show on Rotoballer on Monday nights, 7:30. And we ran our model, and it's very light and kind of fun. We each throw in 3 categories at the beginning of the show and kind of create one live. But Kitayama popped out second in the model, so I feel like I have to roll with him this week. I'm not sure if that's an indication on our model or how he's playing, but I think that he's going to have a pretty big bounce back week this week. I'm going to take him.
All right. Knock it off the board. Spence, is Kurt Kitayama on your radar for the tournament?
Joel, I mean, Kurt Kitayama and Daniel Berger. I wrote this in my article this week. I don't know how else to describe them. They're jackasses. They grade so well in my model every single week. Kitayama's 16th overall, so I'm not quite as high as what Matt is on it. But if I look from just a statistical perspective, and a lot of that is probably what models are looking at without some of the course form and current history of what you're getting. Like Kitayama's 5th overall for me, and he has been good on this course. It's a pure putting contest if you are worried about that putter. Any of like the comp courses that you want to try to find, he's inside of the top 5 at. All the aggression scores, he looks really good. I unfortunately like him, but I mean, this is a name that I lost matchups on him last week. I seem to never get him correct. So model loves him. Model loves him every single week. I don't know what to think about the guy.
All right. Well, there you have it. You got Spence at a loss. Matty, you got one more. To follow that up, where are you going with your 4th pick?
Well, I want to get your take on this guy, so I'm going to pick him. I'm going to be betting him this week, and I would imagine maybe I'm not like as much of an ownership expert as you two and kind of DraftKings expert, but I imagine he's might not be that high on due to the course history and kind of the predictive history at this event. But I'm going to take Victor Hovland. I don't know why he hasn't played well here. It seems like it's a course that his game is suited for. So I'm going to just kind of ignore his course history. I think he's going to have a good week. I thought it was a pretty good number on him in the outright market. We haven't seen him stateside yet this year, but he played pretty well his last time out in Dubai, I believe it was. He was 14th, but he had kind of a rough Sunday. He hit it pretty well. I think Hovland's going to have a pretty big year. So I'm going to take him this week, and I'd kind of like to get your guys' thoughts on this as well, where you're at with him. And at this event in particular, kind of maybe why he hasn't played well.
Well, what's interesting about that is I won't put too much weight into him not playing well because he hasn't played here that much. I think it's only been twice, right? Or did he play here like a long time ago?
I think it's 3 times, and I think he's made 1 of 3 cuts, and it wasn't really anything special. But to your point, I think the first time he played here, he was very young.
He was young, and he hasn't played here the last 2 years, so it was still a little bit ago when he last did. I think the weird thing for me with Hovland this week, it just feels like we haven't seen him in a while, right? It just feels like he's kind of been off the radar for a little bit, which could be a good thing, right? Which means maybe you get a Victor Hovland who's lower owned than he should be because he's been off the radar, and obviously the upside that he has. I think to the point you made when you started kind of making the pick, I think he's a good GPP play. If you're looking for upside, a tournament play, a lower ownership, obviously someone who you can't really pair with Scotty to make it work, I think he makes sense. If you're looking for someone safe in the cash game, it's probably not the route I would take. But that's my take. I'd love to hear from you, Spence.
I see him at 11% owned, which is higher than what I anticipated him being. It's a tough one with him because a lot of the upside numbers in my model do really like him for probably some of the reasons that Matt's been talking about. If I'm directly comparing him, and some of these names are off the board, and other ones, I guess you could still decide between. But like, I would probably prefer Sam Burns. I'd probably prefer Maverick McNeely. I certainly, though, think he is a top 15 golfer in this tournament with legitimate top 7 or 8 upside. That, I mean, even if you look at that 11% ownership, that's the 16th overall. It's not like he's super popular, just a little bit more so than I would have thought with the course history. But I'm indifferent on him. My model's pretty neutral in all regards, but sometimes when you can get that upside answer that enters, like that is where in GPPs you can kind of kind of create a different sort of a build. I don't have it up in front of me right now. Just out of curiosity, if one of you could pull it up, how much would you have left if you did start hypothetically Scotty and Hovland?
Oh, it's a good per pick.
Yes, for the remaining 4.
Well, I have too many things on. Matty, are you able to look?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me do this real quick. You started with Scotty and Hovland. You would have 6,575 average per remaining pick.
So you could do it. It'd be tight, but you could do it. You could do it. Spence, if you're playing Scotty this week, would you want to do a lineup like that where you put him with one other A player and then go down to the 6K range, or would you want to balance it up with it like the audience kind of has now, where they maybe can live a little bit more in the mid 7K range? I don't know. Did we lose Spence?
Might be frozen over there.
I think Spence is frozen. So while we wait for him to get back, we will keep the draft moving as we are running late on time. And my 3 picks are in. It looks like 1 nomination for Burns. All right. I would have thought for sure I was getting Novak, which I would have been happy with. But all right. You're finally giving me Sam Burns off the board. I'm surprised he stayed around this long. I thought Sam Burns would have gone off the board sooner this week. He's another one whose ownership I'd want to get a look at and see what that is. If he stays below 15%, I think Sam Burns makes a lot of sense this week. As he's, relatively affordable in this 9K range, 9.4, him and McNeely, some of these other guys have plenty of upside. If he gets that putter rolling like we've seen him do, we know Sam Burns has top 5, could even win this tournament. So he's one of my favorite plays of the week. Getting him in the 4th round here, I'm pretty happy about. So, Maddie, I'd like to go back to you. I think you mentioned you like Sam Burns earlier, but want to just confirm here, will he be in your player pool this week?
Yeah, I do like Sam Burns. I considered him actually, with my last pick as well. I think he makes a lot of sense in this course. Like you said, he can get really hot with the putter. I could see him, playing well this week. I think it's a really good pick.
Boom. All right. Sam Burns off the board. Looks like we lost Spencer, which is a little concerning because I want to make sure we get him back. And it's also his pick. So it puts us in a predicament. I want to give him a minute to get back. So while we wait, I'll put a minute on the clock to get Spencer back. If not, we'll have to skip his pick for now and go back to him just to keep the draft moving.
Yeah.
While we wait that minute.
He threw on the Penny Hardaway jersey, and he can't stay on the court.
You almost got skipped. You were about to get skipped. Luckily, the timing worked out for you, so you're back on the clock here. So for you to confirm, Sam Burns is locked in for my pick, and you're on the clock with your 4th.
Let me figure out what is going on right now. I asked this question, and my computer exploded on itself. I don't know what answer was given from Matt of how much money is left. I don't know what the discussion. I mean, I would assume not much. I don't really know what happened. I do like Matt's comment about the Penny Hardaway thing. It's a very unfortunate thing with him. And I guess you put on this jersey and you just suffer injuries. And I've been walking around this house. I don't know what I've done. Maybe it's just old age. I've been walking around, limping around this house for the last week. So probably putting this jersey on was not the smartest idea with it. I'm trying to bring my model back up right now. I am going to take, just to make this simple, Sam Stevens with my selection here. I think Stevens is another one of those names that is playing much better than what public sentiment seems to be with him. I have him as a top 20 player in this tournament at that $7,200 price tag, and I only see 7% ownership. I was expecting him to be much more popular than this from what we've gotten recently. So I will take Sam Stevens with this pick, and I'll stop talking so my internet doesn't flame out on itself again.
Sam Stevens off the board. I really liked Stevens last week. I think he's a guy, again, who I'll be going back to this week at 7,200. I think he's a really good value play. Matty, would love to hear for you. Is Sam Stevens going to be in your player pool this week?
I like the pick. Yeah, I think it's a good choice. I think it's yeah, I'm on board with that pick, Spencer. I think that he's he's playing well right now. He's hitting the ball really well off the tee and on approach. So yeah, I like Sam Stevenson.
All right, lock it in. Sam Stevens off the board. Team audience, you got two here. You have Scheffler. You still need to have some value. What's interesting is Maddie is a little bit more, but me, Spencer, and team audience are going to be fighting for a similar price range on these next couple of picks. So it can get a little competitive. It looks like Hong Kong Lee is locked in as the first audience pick. And then the audience, you'll need one more. Spence, Hong Kong Lee, are you playing him this week?
I like him. I think he's another one of those names that we keep talking about that just remains underpriced. Back-to-back top 11 finishes, ownership that's not going to be substantially up there. That $7,500 price tag really opens up the world for you there. Be curious to see what kind of combinations go Scotty and Haotong. It doesn't look like it's going to be a ton based off of this early ownership projections, but I like Haotong. I've liked Haotong though for years. They're one of the biggest wagers I had made, at least at the time years ago, is when Haotong was in the match play competition. And funny enough, Matt, I'll tell you the story on this because you might get a kick out of it. He was up against Brooks Koepka in his pod, and I unloaded on Haotong, and Haotong ended up beating Brooks. And so I've always had good vibes with Haotong for that reason.
That's a funny story. Yeah, Haotong. I mean, he's an easy guy to root for. He's playing really well right now. I'm happy to see him, back on tour and playing well. He went through, a rough patch for a little bit there, but he's playing really well. I'm actually kind of surprised. I don't know if it's just our space that he's not more popular because it seems like he's kind of getting a lot of talk and traction, at least in our space from people, noticing his play and getting behind him.
Boom. All right. Lee off the board. And it is.
I think it's Jacob Bridgman.
Bridgman?
I believe so.
I think it's Bridgman too. All right, Jacob Bridgman off the board. It's interesting how the value picks are coming along around Scheffler here. I'm digging the audience team. I think they did a good job drafting around Scheffler. I like the Lee Bridgman combo here. Let's go to you, Matty. Are you playing Jacob Bridgman this week?
I haven't gone down the Bridgman rabbit hole yet, but obviously a very good start to the year in 2026. Good finishes at the Sony and the Amex. I think that's a nice pick here late in the draft. I'm not sure where, his ownership numbers lie, but playing really good golf right now. I like it.
Boom. All right. Spence, we're back to you with your fifth pick, 7,200 to spend. Where are you going?
So there are 14 players for me, which is kind of a high number. That I ran 7 statistical categories this week. That's I think it's in all of my articles, even the free ones. I know the premium article, you can get a deeper dive into all the categories that I weighed this week, but there were 13 or 14 players, I'd have to go back and double check, that landed inside of the top 60 for every single one of those metrics. And I mean, those names are going to be your expected names like Scotty Scheffler, Cameron Young. JJ Spawn was a little bit interesting. It's kind of a hit and miss in my model for him with that. Ricky Fowler, I've seen Jake Knapp's name a bunch of times. A lot of those golfers, though, are the $8,000 and up options that you would expect to see. There were 2 names in the $6,000 range that ended up fitting that mold. One, I do not trust whatsoever. I'm going to leave him nameless for the sake of this. If you want to look at him in my model, you can. It's just the current form is so bad right now that I don't really want to put his name out there as a recommendation. But the name that I will give is Alex Smalley at 6,800. I understand that he's entering this tournament off of a missed cut at the Farmers. He hasn't necessarily started the year extremely hot with a 44th at the Amex and a 40th at the Sony Open. But a lot of the deeper dive metric stuff for him at this course did really like his fit here. 15th overall in one of the categories I just talked about. That's essentially aggression plus expected score plus off the tee traits. And then There's a handful of other areas, I mean, for him to be able to enter that zone where he was inside the top 40. So, Joel, you talk about this all the time, and maybe this is where for a 4-person show, it's better than it is for a GPP contest. I don't know what Smalley's actual upside is, even inside of my model. He's lacking some of those upside metrics, but he is one of the safest golfers that I have in my sheet in this $6,000 range. And I am a person who tends to believe that he has a little bit more upside than may meet the eye on any given week. So I like Alex Smalley here a lot. This is kind of one of those bridges that I'm willing to kind of land on and just take my chances with.
Boom. All right. There you have it. Alex Smalley off the board. All right. I got my 3. So I'm going to go with surprise, Andrew Novak as my first. And if I need 2 more, I can. But I feel like that's probably the good direction to go here. Is just to stick with Novak. But in case you guys need some more options, I guess I can throw out there. I'm going to go with Min-Woo Lee. And the last one, I'm really torn between 2. I'm going to say Davis Thompson. Audience, we'll need 1. And while we wait for that nomination to come in, we'll go to you, Spence. Of the 3 of those, instead of saying who would you take, I'll go the opposite route. Who would you have eliminated of those 3?
Of the person I do not want?
Correct.
Probably Min-Woo Lee. I understand the upside. I understand the idea that he can bomb it out here and kind of miss. I just think that the ownership is very high for the volatility that he brings you.
That's fair.
Now, Spencer, I have a question for you with that. I feel like Min-Woo Lee, just from this is not like a statistical metric, but from a personality standpoint, I mean, this event is like right up his alley with feeding into the crowd and getting fired up. This kind of seems to be a tailor-made atmosphere for a guy like Min-Woo Lee.
I would agree with that. And I mean, any of the distance metrics that you want to find, and a lot of that's going to look good. I always worry at the end of the day of what the proximity actually is for him. His iron play is really putrid almost across the bag. And some of the short iron stuff he's inside of the top 10 for, but I mean, kind of when you get into that 150 to 200 plus range, he's very hit and miss there. But that's also the kind of golfer, as you talked about. His personality is perfect for this. I don't know what it usually looks like for him out there, but I could see him having his little spectacle with everybody with their chef's hats on, walking around and cheering him on. And he is one of those names that's going to get to the par 3 there, and he's going to create mayhem. So I think there's a reason why we've seen him play it in back-to-back years, and there's probably a reason why he's found success at this tournament in the past. But for me, he's more of a cash game play probably, even though he has that ownership, which is kind of a weird way to say that.
No, I get it. I don't love him as much with the high ownership, but when you're in my position and you can't just make a pick and you got to give options, that's how it fell. So I'm happy with Minu. I'm happy the way that my roster is coming around. Matt, you get to finish out your squad here. I like the look of your roster for your first draft. I think you got an interesting looking squad, especially for a GPP, as I think you found some ways to get different. How are you rounding out your squad?
I am going to go with I don't know how popular this guy's going to be. I know he's been fairly talked about, at least from an outright perspective this week, because I think that he was mispriced. But I'm going to take Sepp Straka, 7,900. I don't really know why. I mean, he was like 88 to 1 or something on DraftKings in the outright market. It seemed like kind of a crazy number. He missed a cut at the Amex, but he still, I mean, in his measured round on the stadium course, he hit it really well on approach. He's good off the tee. He was 3rd at the Hero World Challenge last time he played. I mean, this guy's won a couple times in the last couple of years. He played well here last year. I think that he's turned into like really a pretty good player. So I like him this week. I think, he presents value in the outright market. I don't know where his ownership numbers lie, whether that's a good, DraftKings strategy play or not, but I feel like the price is pretty good for him.
I agree. Sepp Straka, he's kind of like the opposite play where of, I mean, I want to say Thagala, but really, he, was so hot. He was so good a year ago, and he's cooled off some. And so it's kind of like, can he refine that form of where he was, or has he now kind of morphed back into more of a mediocre play? And I think it's going to take maybe the first month or two of this season for us to determine. But at 7,900, he definitely possesses as much upside from what we've seen the last year and a half of anyone else in the 7K range. So, it's definitely a risky play in GPP, but the upside is there. Straka off the board, 8,400 to spend. Who's your last pick, Matt?
Last pick, I am going to go with, I'm going to take a guy that I kind of like. I'm curious to see how he plays this week and in this atmosphere. He's still kind of fairly young on tour. So I'm kind of feeling out what courses I think that he's going to kind of pop and play well at. But I'm going to take Matt McCarty. 7,700. He's playing well to start this year. I think he can get really hot with the putter, which is going to kind of help him, out this week. He is coming off top 20 at the Farmers Insurance. He didn't hit the ball as well on approach as he did the previous week at the Amex, which I thought was a event that was way more kind of tailored for him. But still, top 20 at Torrey Pines is definitely encouraging because I didn't really ping that as a McCarty course. So I'm curious to see how he plays this week, but I like the way he's trending right now. So I'll round out my lineup with him.
I like it. I like that pick a lot, actually. I would probably say on paper, maybe he's not like the most ideal pick you would think for this course, but I think he's one of those guys that is just better than the price tag says he is. I think he gives you upside. We've seen him kind of put strong tournaments together all 4 days. I think Matthew McCarty is someone who gets slept on more than he should. So he's a sneaky pick. I think he's someone that I look to get in my rosters most weeks. So I like the McCarty pick. Spence, would love to hear from you on both Sepp Straka and Matthew McCarty this week.
I'll start with Sepp on this. Sepp and Brooks are two of the names that I've seen that for whatever reason, the head-to-head market, and maybe that's because they're volatile golfers, and I can kind of buy that narrative, but Sepp and Brooks seem to just be massive underdogs across the board against any golfer that they're paired with. But my model really likes each one of them. I don't know if I have the balls to actually go down that route and kind of bet on the volatility that they have inside of that head-to-head market, but they're kind of those like prototypical GPP plays that at any given time, Sepp can put the pieces together. Brooks can put the pieces together and they can win at this tournament. They can top five. If they are the ones that are going toe to toe with Scotty on Sunday, I mean, like nobody's going to be the favorite to beat him, but those are names that I feel like at least you're going to get your best shot from them. That doesn't even mean that they don't implode at the end of the day, but these are golfers that have won. And I think that if you look at Matt's lineup and your lineup too, Joel, it's kind of interesting, I guess is the word I will use, because when you go Scotty, you end up in you can exchange the names of what the audience has. It's going to be all those names you're going to mix and match around, and that's how they're going to do a build. And then when you don't go Scotty, there's kind of this, like you live in, like Joel, you have 4 players that are above $8,400. Matt has every single person 7,600 or above. There's a lot of different ways that you can build a lineup this week. And some routes with Scotty make sense. And I think some routes without Scotty can even make sense. And I think that is why Scotty's pricing is as good as it is, because you actually now have to make a decision on this. But there's a lot of good builds, as you two have shown, that can be built without Scotty in your lineup.
Boom. There you have it. And I think the way we did it, the way you said it, Spence, is spot on. They're drafting it on the show, kind of giving you a feel of what different lineups can look like if you take different approaches. Obviously, we were forced to do it on the draft, but when you're making lineups, like you can see what that looks like. If you want to go Scotty, you got to find your value. If you like a lot of value plays, Scotty makes sense. If you don't like the value, then you can still build a really balanced lineup that can be different and compete in the GPP. So it really here, it's just there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, right? Just pick your way and go make some money. All right, my 3 here are going to be obviously Novak. Who I'm going to go with Keith Mitchell, and I might actually just give you guys 4 to choose from. I might give you an extra because I'm kind of torn on the last one. I'm really torn between Davis Thompson as my last option or Tony Finau. So I'll give you 4. I'll let you guys pick. I'm going to actually, I'm not. I'm going to go with Finau. Forget Thompson. So there you have it. Finau, Novak, or Keith Mitchell for me. And so I'll go back to you on this with Matt. Of the 3 options I gave, who would you not take? Who are you eliminating?
Novak, Mitchell, Finau. So Finau, I think, is interesting. I actually wrote about him in my long shots article this week with Roto Bowler because he looked really good last week at Torrey Pines. I know that's a course he kind of always plays well at, but his numbers off the tee and on approach the last couple of weeks have been encouraging. He lost in a playoff here to Webb back in, I forget what year it was, 2020 maybe, but he's kind of shown that he can, play this course well. I just think there's still some volatility there with Finau. Like, I don't know if he's fully back. There's an absolute chance that he just puts up a dud this week, which from like a outright perspective, it really doesn't matter whether you're contending or you come in last place. You either win or you don't, but on kind of like a DraftKings where you get rewarded with making the cut and whatnot, I think that there's still a very low floor for Tony Finau versus maybe those other 2 guys.
All right. I love it. I'm happy with Keith Mitchell. Obviously, I wanted Novak because I always want Novak, but Keith Mitchell has a really good history here. He's great off the tee. That's his strength. He's going to succeed on that spot. He likes this course at 7,400. I do feel like he's a little bit on the safer side, maybe someone I'd prefer for a cash play, but I think you can play him in tournaments as well. Like if you get the winner in your lineup and he gets you a 24th place, I think that can still do really well. So I think there's a lot to like about Keith Mitchell this week. I think my one question would be, I'd love to get your insight on this, Spencer. What does the ownership for Keith Mitchell look like?
6.76%, 37th highest owned golfer.
I think I'm happy to play him at 6%. I think that's a pretty good number for him there. I thought it was actually going to be a little bit higher because of his history, but at 6%, then I like Keith Mitchell even more. So that's a wrap for me. Spence, you got your last pick here at 7,700. We'd love to get your take on Keith Mitchell and then how you rounding out your draft.
Sometimes I stick my foot in my mouth in these situations and I say more than I probably should. I think of all those options that you had discussed. First of all, I like Davis Thompson. I don't know if I like him more than Keith Mitchell and Andrew Novak. They're kind of all in that same range to me. I think Matt's comment is spot on of how he explained it. It is a high ceiling play with Tony Finau with a little bit of ownership that's now starting to come in on him, and an extremely low floor that if you told me Finau ends up going 4 over par and missing the cut, I would not be shocked whatsoever. The Farmers and Torrey Pines will always be that course where he seems to be able to just show up at and turn it on. And this is a venue too, as Matt alluded to. Like, if I recall correctly, I think he should have beaten Webb Simpson in that when they went head to head against each other. I feel like
I might be mixing up years, but I'm pretty sure Webb Simpson got a hole in one on the back 9. I don't know if it was Sunday. It might have been Sunday even. Like, it was something kind of ridiculous happened, to your point, where it looked like it was a classic Tony Finau event where it looked like he was going to win and then he didn't. It happened a lot back in those days. But yeah, I think that you're correct where he probably should have won that week.
And I think you are correct that I believe Webb Simpson did hit a hole in one. It might have been on Saturday, could have been Sunday, but it was one of those days because I think I had a Finau ticket that week and I saw Webb skyrocketing, and everybody knows I like to play Webb, and I did not have Webb for that tournament. So it was not one of those fun weekend tournaments to watch when you have somebody in contention that couldn't close against somebody that you usually back who did close in that situation. But yeah, I don't know. I'm probably out on Tony Finau. I kind of am just in that spot where I'd rather continue to fade him. All right, I will give my last pick. I do want to say, and I was expecting him to be drafted, and I mean, there's reasons that you wouldn't get Tim, and I certainly understand that, but I do like Jake Knapp this week at 8,800. Even at that 15% ownership, I still think he is too low owned, and kind of a wild statement to make, might even be a little bit too cheap for what we're seeing from him from his off the tee stuff. But Can't afford him, so not going to give that selection. I'm going to say Rasmus Højgaard here. I considered Davis Thompson. I considered Nikolai Højgaard. I'm going to go with Rasmus in this spot, though. A lot of the off-the-tee metrics for him at similar courses are popping for me in my sheet. And he's inside of the top 25 in a lot of the key areas of what I was looking at sub 10%. So I could very easily see Rasmus fitting into any build, whether it's a Scotty build or something else. And I think the upside's very high for him this week to like legitimately top 10 this tournament. So I'm happy to get him here with my last pick.
I mean, Spence did open the show saying he's prioritizing power this week, and he certainly showed that with his draft. So he got a lot of power. I can see the upside with Rasmus, and it's interesting. I feel like I can never get him and his brother right. I always play the wrong one at the wrong week. But hopefully you get that one right this week. There's certainly some upside there with your 7K range. Burger locked in. I'm glad Burger ended up going here. Because I was almost going to say, like, hey, did Daniel Berger, I think you did mention him early in the show, Spence, but close to going unmentioned in the draft. Wanted to make sure he got brought up, but the audience sneaks him in with their last pick. Great pick by the audience here. He was someone I was kind of considering there with one of my last picks as well. With my last one, I just couldn't afford him anymore. But if you're doing a Scotty shuffle lineup where you need to find some 7K range value, Daniel Berger certainly makes a lot of sense this week. Spence, we'd love to get your take. I think you said earlier in the show you like Burger this week, right?
I like Burger every week. Like the Burger and Kitayama thing, they're always going to pop for me. They always show really well in my model. They're always top 25 players, and I think with each one of them, it unfortunately, I guess is the way I would word it, comes down to the putter. As far as Burger is concerned, though, I do want to throw these metrics out there into the world because I'm always trying to figure out what is somebody's baseline putting. So Burger is 84th over a 2-year perspective in my model. And how are they on specific green complexes that are going to mimic what you get that week? So you take desert courses, Daniel Berger's 40th with his putter. You take just TPC courses, he's 7th with his putter. You take fast greens that are similar to these, he's 20th with his putter. So if you could promise me that we actually see positive trajectory with Daniel Berger's putter, because of the surface that he's on, sure, the upside's very high for him.
Boom. Daniel Berger off the board. That is a wrap for the draft tonight. It was fun. We have an exciting week of golf ahead of us. Don't forget, smash the like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. Let us know who you think will be crowned king of the draft this week. As you know, we'll come back next week, crown the champion, talk some smack, and do it all over again. I will not be getting punished next week. No punishments for me. We'll be moving off. Someone else is getting punished. I actually like my squad, so I'm happy about that. But before we let you go, we have our best bets of the week that we will break down with you. Before I bring the draft board down, take a look. Make sure you take the mental note right in the chat. Which team do you think is going to win? You will be on the right or wrong side of history. Put it in the chat now. Take a side, take a stance. We'll see who is right and who is wrong next Tuesday night. For our bets of the week, Spence, let's start with you. Is there one bet you love for this week at the Waste Management?
I don't want to bring the mood down and say that there's not one bet that stands out above everything else. For me, when I looked at this, if you look at the outright market, there's a lot of negatives that come into play with Scotty being involved in this tournament. I think the matchups, like I gave 4 last week inside of my Rotoballer article. I went 3-1. All of these plays this week would be worse than all of those 4 plays last week that I have. So it's one of those things that I would say all the matchups are similar. I don't feel super strong about any of them compared to the rest, but I'm going to say, to kind of keep to the trend of this show, Johnny Kiefer, the best price you can get on him right now would be, you can find a 117, minus 117 out there. Johnny Kiefer over Steven Yeager.
Oh, all right. Johnny Kiefer. Yeah, and this is now the second time in 3 weeks you're giving a Johnny Kiefer head-to-head. It sounds like Johnny Kiefer might be your guy. All right, Johnny Kiefer. How about you, Matt? What is your bet of the week?
I'm going to go. I'm looking right now in the placement market here, and I talked about this during the draft, so I might as well stick with it. Top 10, including ties. Jordan Spieth, plus 420. Seems like an automatic top 10 at this event. I'm going to ride with it.
You know, it's funny. My bet is also Jordan Spieth, and it's top 20 instead of top 10. But I was going with Jordan Spieth, and I have similar reasons. It seems like they're giving you a oddly good number for Spieth, someone who loves this course, who seems to be playing good golf. In the top 20 market, he's plus 340, which is just a big number for someone who I think top 20 seems pretty reasonable. So me and Maddie aligned. Jordan Spieth, give us a placement market. Doesn't have to beat Scotty, just has to play well this week. So I love it. Hey, apologies for going long tonight, but appreciate you all for tuning in, team audience, everyone who listens to the show. You guys are the real MVP. We are super grateful for Matt Miller coming on the show tonight and drafting with us. Like I said before, if you don't already follow Matt, make sure you do. I promise you'll make more money betting on golf this season by following his content. Matt, we appreciate you coming on. You were great drafting tonight. Unfortunately, you're not going to win the draft, but you did a good job. Please tell everyone where else they can find you this week.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun as always. Hope to come back sometime. You can find me on Twitter at MattyMills85. Roto Bowler, we put out a lot of content. The whole team is great. I do a live show every Monday, 7:30. Me and Ian, make sure to check out his stuff as well. And I have my weekly long shots article on Roto Bowler as well. That usually comes out every Tuesday. So follow me on Twitter. You can kind of find everything you need from there. But again, appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And like I said, we mentioned it last week. I'm mentioning it this week. Spencer is really assembling an all-star team at Roto Baller, bringing in all the best golf content. If you're getting ready for a golf tournament, you're placing bets, you're playing DFS, it's a one-stop shop to get everything you need to make sure you end up in the green in the long run, because you want to find a place where people are doing the research. And in golf, there is so much research that can and needs to be done for you to have all the information to make sure you're making smart, wise, intelligent picks. Spence, what did I forget tonight?
Well, I appreciate everyone tuning into the show. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to construct this, and the audience is such a mainstay in everything that we do. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. I do want to give a shout out to the FSWA. If people did not see, I was nominated for Golf Writer of the Year and Research Article of the Year. The Golf Writer of the Year is up against Pat Mayo and Alex Blickel. It's always such a prestigious honor anytime that has been thrown in my direction. So I want to give a shout out to the FSWA, and I actually want to do something on this show here tonight. We'll see what ends up happening with it. If I win, I would like to do a giveaway for a month package at Roto Baller. If I win either one of the two, somebody in this chat, just keep commenting every single week. Say that you would like to be included. You're not a part of it. Win one of those two titles, we'll give away a month subscription. And then if I win both of them, we'll figure out what the award ends up being. We'll call it 5 for the time being. So 5 month-long subscriptions. You could, on the day, depending on what day the announcement's made, you might be able to convince me for more on that. But just shout out to everybody who does read my content. Yes, Joel.
Question, Spencer. How many times have you already won Golf Writer of the Year?
So I've been nominated twice. This is my third time. I've won the previous 2 times. I won in 2021, and then I won last year.
And so you've already won 2 times. Does it even still exciting anymore? Or is it just kind of like expected? Like, I'm the Golf Writer of the Year. You know, I gotta win. I'm just curious. How that comes through.
I'm a very competitive person. I feel the pressure of it every single year. It's something that means a lot to me. It's something that I will never take for granted with it. We are in a space of so many quality writers and content creators. Everybody who puts out work and puts themselves out there, it is not easy to do. And I used to think that the writing part of it was the easier route to go, because to me, I never wanted to public speak. I never wanted to be on a podcast. I told Matt the very first time we did a show together, like please, let's just get out of here. Let's figure out what this is. And Matt was very generous throughout that process. And, I'm very proud of where I've come in a lot of the speaking parts of it. But whether it's podcasts or written form, everybody that puts out work, you're sticking your neck on the line, and you're really putting out work for the whole world to see. And we have so many great content creators across the spectrum. in the golf space that it will never be something that I take for granted for that reason. I could name 100 people in this golf world that are all deserving of one of those titles. So I just really appreciate that contest for giving me the acknowledgement there. And I really appreciate anybody who tunes into my content that gives me the chance to do this for a living.
And I'll say, if you follow us, you know that I'm an idiot and I joke around. But if you know Spencer, he would never take it for granted. He would never say, of course I'm going to win. That's just not his personality. But one thing I'll add that Spencer won't say about himself is, if you're watching our show, you follow Rollabugger, you know Spencer's work, he deserves it. And there's a reason he's won it twice, and there's a reason he's nominated again. There is a lot of effort that goes into getting you all this information. This isn't just something he wakes up and shows up and does. There is a ton that he puts into behind the scenes to get to the point that he can present it to you. And then you guys get all that information to take, to make bets with, to get what you need. But Spencer puts in the legwork. He works super hard. He takes this very seriously, and that's why his name keeps showing up when they give out these awards, because of the effort that he puts in. I'm honored to be able to just do a show with you every week, and this is where I get a lot of information just picking your brain because of how well in tune you are with this space. So, Spence, we appreciate you. You deserve it. Of course, we're pulling for you every year like we always do.
I really appreciate the kind words. And if just let me know if you're not a part of it already. And hopefully in a couple of weeks when it gets announced, we can pick some winners for that.
Well, Spence, I hope you win that, but you're not winning this draft. I'm winning that this week. So good luck to you, Spence, on the FSWA. Good luck to you, team audience, on the 3-peat in King of the Draft. Matt, going for your first win. A lot of moving pieces. It's going to be a lot of fun betting on the golf this weekend. And of course, tune back next Tuesday night. We'll do